Hi guys, this is another training video. Today is the 7th day in a row that I train, and today I will train my abs. My shoulders and my triceps, they feel much better now, but I'm not so confident that I can be back to training basketball handle right now, so I will spend another day to rest and recover better. Today will be a training session for my abs. Let's get into it. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, I'm setting up something to listen to when I train. Let's see what to listen to. Max Fisher. Okay.
Even as much as there's this one part of modern life that people are absolutely fed up with. Maybe even as much as politics or the economy, even though it's something that's supposed to be fun and joyful. I am referring to dating.
I'm okay with not dating for the rest of my life.
You look happy. Yeah, thanks. I stopped dating.
I'm done with dating. Zero interest in dating.
Dating is so trash. I just went on the worst date in U.S. history.
This is not just like vibes. This shows up in the data. Check this out. In 2020, Pew asked thousands of single Americans about their experiences. When asked how their dating life was going, 67% said not too well or not well at all, to only 33% who said very or fairly well. And when asked about finding people they even wanted to date, only 25% said it had been easy compared to 75% who called it difficult. It's really bad. And this is new. When Pew asked how this compared to 10 years ago, 47% said it had gotten harder, to only 19% who said it had gotten easier, and the rest saying it was the same. And you might think, oh, I get it, it's the apps. But look at the survey of high school seniors going back to 1976, asking if they ever go on dates. Back in the 70s and 80s, almost 90% said yes. But then it started to decline in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. Now, only 46% of high school seniors have dating lives, less than half. If you dig into the numbers, this romantic recession is hitting young people, older people, well off and the struggling, people who use dating apps, and people who have never opened one. This is something deeper that has changed. This chart shows the percentage of all adults who live alone. It is way up. So is the percentage of young adults who had no sex in the last year. It's almost double. And the percentage of adults who have sex regularly, at least once a week, is way down, almost half. More and more people are never partnering up at all, to the point of crashing birth rates. And that's not just in the US. This is everywhere. Here's the percentage of young adults aged 25 to 34 married or cohabitating. The blue line is for Latin America, and the red line is for the Middle East. Two very different places, same big trend. Well, here, this chart tracks women in South Korea going back to the 60s. The red line shows the percentage who reach 40 never having married. And the green line shows the percentage who never have kids. And look, if not partnering up is your choice, God bless, great, live your truth. But what these surveys tend to find is people do want a partner. They do want a family, they just can't get there because dating doesn't work for them anymore. And the question we're going to ask today is why. And this is one of those things I know where everybody has a theory, everybody has a take, because we've all lived it in one form or another.
Dating apps have absolutely ruined dating. Social media is literally ruining dating.
We swipe people all day long like we're window shopping.
Dating is boring and men are not interesting.
Women's standards today are
a little interaction.
Completely unrealistic.
But we want to understand this systemically, the big structural causes that might be harder to spot. So we are going to answer this question: why is dating broken? Why do we all suddenly hate it rigorously with hard data? So before we get started, just a quick aside. About half of this video is going to focus on dating between men and women. And that's not because that's quote-unquote the default or anything like that. It's because that is the kind that is most in crisis right now. But there's a lot of play here that's universal too, and that'll be the other half of the video. I just want to acknowledge that up front so nobody feels left out. Good? Good. So we will eventually wind our way to dating apps. I think their role is kind of overstated, but there is this one super specific, super overlooked effect they have that I want to talk about. We'll also look at our growing culture of isolation, why changes in how we live are leading to changes in how we think and behave, which are making us all find dating a lot harder and less appealing. And yeah, we are going to talk about men. Fellas, we collectively are going through it right now, but remember, we're using hard numbers to talk about all this rigorously, not as a blame or as a victimhood thing. And in that same vein, we are going to start with women, who are at the heart of the story, and that really comes through when you dig deeper into that data from the start of the video. All right, remember this Pew study? They also asked people who are trying to date what's hardest about it. 35% of men said it was finding someone who meets their expectations. But women were nearly twice as likely to give the same answer, 56%. And go back to that survey tracking high school seniors from 1976 to today. It also asked whether they expect to get married one day. Boys have shown a modest decline in the last 20 years, but look at the girls. Huge drop, well below the boys. And that's just since 2010. Now let's look at high school seniors' belief that they will have kids one day. Boys, again, slight decline. Girls, big, big drop. And if you're thinking, well, maybe the girls want to partner up, but they're just pessimistic, or they think marriage is outdated, the survey also asked whether they think they will even want a lifelong mate, married or not. And yeah, boys, again, slight dip. Girls, dropping hard and fast. No sign of slowing. One last data point. This is from a 2023 survey on attitudes on, yes, dating. And one of the things it asked about was young people's interest in dating at all. 52% of men said yes, about half. Compare that to only 36% of women, just 1 in 3. And this gap seems really important. It shows up all over the place. So what explains it? And the survey actually asked a bunch of those women to elaborate. Most cited difficulty finding someone who meets their expectations. But what's especially interesting is how they define that. This is a laundry list of must-have qualities that are basic standards for how they want to be treated. One of them said, I don't want to be in a relationship where somebody's not open-minded about the things that I want to do. Here's another. The biggest thing is respect. Another. Men are still looking for a type of women that doesn't really exist anymore, that 1950s housewife type. Girls want to go to college, they want to have a career, they want to make a name for themselves. This is the first really big piece of the puzzle. A lot of women, straight women, are giving up on dating, not because they don't want to date or they don't want romance or even because they're dissatisfied with the dates themselves, but because they're dissatisfied with how they're being treated in modern relationships. So what changed? There's this Stanford economist named Alice Evans who has written about what she calls female empowerment and the crisis of masculinity. And in short, she looked at marriage rates around the world and found that wherever women's paychecks caught up with men's, or wherever staying single into adulthood lost its social stigma, women raised their standards. Something I noticed is that economists who study this talk about romantic partnerships as a kind of bargain. That's how they like to think of it, where each contributes and each gets something in return. Sort of a big trade-off, which I know that's not the most romantic way to talk about like love and family, but bear with me, it's helpful. For a long time, the exchange was this. Both provide each other with love. That's the big one. Women, for a long time, also counted on marriage to provide financial security, since they were mostly barred from getting it themselves through employment. Marriage also provided social acceptance. I know that sounds weird today, but for a long time, women who didn't marry were shunned as pariahs, as old maids. This idea of unmarried women as outcasts was with us well through the 1990s. So marriage was a necessity for women to remain a member of society in good standing. So what did men get out of this? First, love, yeah, like we mentioned, and childcare was a big part of the bargain. Crazy labor intensive, for a long time, overwhelmingly provided by women. And then housework, and so another form of labor that fell mostly to women. And for a long time, this held. Not the fairest, not the most equitable, but it held. Mostly because it was close to the only way for women to get financial and social stability. But in the last few years, this whole bargain has started to fall apart. Hey everyone, so with everything about modern life that feels transient or uncertain right now, I wanted to tell you about something dependable and solid that is not an app or a digital device, and it's courtesy of today's sponsor, Fair Watches. Fair is an independent watchmaker out of Southern California, and you can really feel the emphasis on design and quality construction when it's honest with elegance. Watches for being out in the world or in the US. That's fairwatches.com. Alright, now let's get back to our video. But in the last few years, this old bargain has started to fall apart. For one, women face way less stigma for choosing to be single. Marriage is not a necessary price for social acceptance anymore, so we have to take this one out of the bargain. Marriage just does not provide it anymore. At the same time, women, as summed up in this Financial Times article, are starting to surpass men financially. Women are more likely than men to go to college in a lot of countries now. Look at the gap in the UK, for example. Young women are also catching up to men in employment rates, and in some places surpassing them. In the UK, women's average incomes are now higher than men's for the first time ever. So if we go back to that marriage bargain, it doesn't provide financial security to women either, especially for younger women who are really likely to earn as much as men these days. So what about women's end of this bargain? Childcare and housework. Have women's obligations changed to reflect that they're getting less in return? This is a recent economics paper titled, and I love this, Winning the Bread and Baking the Two. One of the things the authors found is that single women spend, on average, slightly more hours per week on housework than single men. But when they get married, women's time on housework grows to about double that of men's. If they have kids, it becomes triple or quadruple. And if you think, well, maybe that's because men are busy out making money, I've got some news for you. The study looked at how housework breaks down in opposite-sex marriages where both partners work. In homes where the female-to-male wage ratio is between 0.25 and 0.5, and that is to say women make between 1/4 and 1/2 of what their husbands make, women spend just over twice as many hours per week on housework as their husband. And that's not so surprising, right? The husband earns more at work, the wife works more at home. But let's see how that changes when we look at couples where the wage ratio is between 0.5 and 1. In other words, where the wife earns anywhere from half her husband's salary to the same amount as him. These are their hours spent on housework. It's exactly the same as that other bar chart. She's making nearly the same salary as him, but still putting in twice as many hours at home. So, okay, let's look at what happens when that wage ratio pops up to between 1 and 2. Household where the wife makes more than her husband, up to twice as much. And surely they're doing equal housework. Nope, it's the same again. Changes. Alright, last bar. Homes where the wife earns more than twice her husband's salary. These are the high-powered executives, corporate attorneys. There's no way they're coming home and scrubbing toilets while the husband plays video games, right? Yep, they are. Even the women who literally financially support their husbands, they still do all the housework. There's a lot of play here, but mostly it comes down to social expectations. Married women are still expected to perform all the duties of a 1950s housewife while now also holding down a career as demanding as their husbands. Getting married means their workload doubling, and their husbands getting cut in half because now someone is bringing home a second salary and taking care of all the homework. The point is, marriage has gone from an at least sort of balanced exchange to a completely lopsided one, which is why more and more women are turning it down. Especially when you consider that research finds that single moms spend less time on housework and have more leisure time than married moms. Basically, dads create more housework for their wives than they contribute. In other words, women who want kids can sort of get a better bargain by raising them by themselves. Being a single mom is, in this particular sense, kind of a better deal. So, to take a step back, marriage has gone from the only option for women to one of several options to now one of the costliest options. So you can see why more and more women are asking, why bother with the hassle of dating at all? The end result is so unappealing. I had summed up by one of my favorite headlines on this. This economist crunched the numbers and stopped dating men. To me, the person who best summed this up is a writer and actually a former colleague of mine. We co-hosted a podcast for a while named Erin Ryan. She wrote, compared to being single, men see being married with children as beneficial. Women see being married with children as detrimental. Men want their fathers' wives, and women don't want their mothers. This is a good moment to transition to men. Think back to that chart we showed earlier. The young men are way more interested in dating than women are. Men still want to date and marry, but straight women increasingly choosing to stay single means that straight men are finding it harder and harder to find a mate. And as this Fox article sums up, single men are, as a result, increasingly unhappy. They're less satisfied with their lives than single women are. Research from Germany found men are now less likely to initiate breakups too. They know.
Okay, so that's all for today's training session. I feel under a very huge pressure right now because my kid is crying downstairs. I do not have enough time to rest, to recover myself. But anyway, this is a good training session. I'm from Jao. Get back to the lives and work that I need to do. Let's do something.